I'm calling this past the popcorn. Porsha Williams is a journalist, Tre'vell Anderson exclaimed. We'll get into that in a moment.
Well, hold on now.
In recent weeks, there's been a conversation hitting the trends, or as Sherry Shepherd might call it, flooding the feeds. Starting fights on podcasts like this one. Tre'vell and I see this story with completely different lenses, and we're going to argue about it.
Oh.
First, I have to take you way, way back. Picture it. April 2021, Los Angeles. Actually, we can take it back further to, well, I mean, I can't remember the specific date, but it was like 2018 or 19. Tre'vell and I hosted a prolific, preeminent, and progressive panel. You like all that? He's a writer.
I do, for me.
Called What is a Journalist? And it was either 2018 or 19. I can't remember, and I couldn't find the link, so that's not important. But we were wrestling with the expanding title of journalist and the many ways that it's becoming kind of compromised. Then in 2021, working on Senate Bill 98, state legislation defending the rights of journalists covering civil unrest and protests here in California, we were tasked with this question again by law enforcement. Now, here in 2023, we're facing another one of this industry's bigger, more challenging questions. Is Porsha Williams a journalist? On a recent episode of The Real Housewives of Most of These People Aren't Really Married, Porsha Williams argues with Candace Dillard-Bassett about whether or not she's a journalist. Porsha cites her job, specifically hosting Dish Nation, a celebrity gossip show, and contrasts that with Candace's communications education. While Porsha says she's, quote, not Googling anything, which...
Oh, God.
I don't know what that means. She should probably Google what a journalist is, except for the fact that she'd probably be justifying in saying such a wild thing. You know we like definitions around here. So by definition, Porsha could argue maybe. Let's look at the definition. Oxford says a journalist is a person who writes for newspapers, magazines, or news websites, or prepares news to be broadcast. Merriam-Webster says a person engaged in journalism, especially a writer or editor for a news medium. Wikipedia actually, while we feel how we feel about Wikipedia as a source, did have interesting language for the definition. It says a journalist is an individual that collects or gathers information in form of text, audio, or pictures, processes them into a newsworthy form, and disseminates it to the public. The act or process mainly done by the journalist is called journalism. That said, I think the word that is consistent through these definitions that really makes it difficult is news, right? What we consider news is an important factor in that question. So Tre'vell, I want to get a sense from you. Why do you insist that Porsha Williams is a journalist?
First of all, that is not what I said, okay? First of all, okay? And you gonna stop besmirching my name on this here YouTube, okay? And over the airwaves.
I really just wanted that clip to exist so we could just put it out.
But Porsha certainly feels as if she is a journalist, and that is an interesting take that I disagree with. And it's not actually about the news element that I think, that you highlighted in those different definitions, and that I think other people would try to decipher. Is Dish Nation doing news? I'm not even going to wrestle with that because, there are so many people who are journalists who don't do news in the ways that we might define news, right? For example, as an entertainment journalist, right, it is not often in broader, in prevailing estimation, it is not often seen as us entertainment journalists doing news, right? But the reason why Porsha Williams is not a journalist is because, actually, you know what? I was about to just dive deep on her real quick, and I'm gonna pull back. I'm gonna pull back And I have some follow-up questions that would help us all, I think, get to the fact of whether Porsha is a journalist. And that would first be, does she feel beholden to any sort of journalistic ethics?
So that to me is really the distinction that we have to discuss, right?
Because right, in the midst of this swirling, right, around her calling herself a journalist, she was recently on The Breakfast Club, dogging Tamron
Mm-hmm.
Hall, who is a journalist, for her experience on the Tamron Hall show, just promoting a book or something. I don't know. And she did not like the line of questioning that Tamron Hall did. DJ Envy or whoever, I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the man's name, on the show, also talked about not enjoying Tamron's line of questioning. And I will just say, one, celebrities, Tamron Hall is a journalist. The folks over on The Breakfast Club are not journalists. They interview, but they're not journalists. And it's no shade, and it's no high. I'm not trying to put it in a hierarchy type situation. Everybody got their role to play, right? Everybody got their role to play, but you're not a journalist because you don't feel beholden to the ethical ramifications that we who hold on to that title of journalist hold ourselves to, even as we interrogate some of those things as well. You know what it is.
Come on.
So that would be it for me. And so I need her to sit down somewhere and hush up.
The journalistic ethics piece of it is really the piece that I feel like is the most important. Like, if you don't have some set of standards on what you will and won't do, on how you will and won't report, on the ways that you engage your source, the all kinds of different things that we have to consider as journalists. If you're not engaged in, if you don't even have like a basic awareness, because I'm not even really clear on like what Portia's awareness of journalistic ethics would be as opposed to her employment of them. But like, that's really where it's a challenge for me.
I was just about to say something really shady. I'm still going to say it, but I want to recognize that my spirit told me not to say it, and I'm say it anyway, which is she just learned a few years ago that the Underground Railroad ain't had, and that's, I don't want to be shady because, you can learn a lot in a few years, right? You can learn a lot in a few years. This is the bad thing about being, somewhat public figures, right? Who end up learning in public, as we do on this show every week, right? Is that somebody is gonna pull a clip.
Oh, right. Sherry Shepherd is never going to live down thinking the earth was flat for just a moment on The View in that first week.
Right. Or somebody will always pull a clip to remind you. Now, I just did it in this situation on Miss Porsha, but that's not the point. All I'm saying is, I wanted to say this before we go. Also, it's about the journalistic ethics. For me, it's also about the rigor that comes for those who consider ourselves journalists in the work that we do. What do I mean by rigor? I mean the processes of fact checking. I mean the research that goes into, navigating stories. Oftentimes, these folks who are in positions like Porsha has on a show like Dish Nation, they are reading a packet of information that a producer or an intern or somebody who has not them has actually prepared and researched.
Maybe a real journalist.
Maybe someone who considers themselves to be a real journalist, maybe not, because they traffic in that shade room-esque type of space, in terms of rumor and comment section beefs, etc., etc. But there's a rigor that I think those of us who are journalists also participate in, that is also deeply important to the work that we do. And so many folks wouldn't know rigor if it slapped them in the face.
Wow. Well, from getting slapped in the face by a hard R to getting into the beauty, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're getting into
Well, what a transition.
You said rigor, and I was like, there's a hard R reference I have to make here. I just don't know what it was. And at the last moment, you gave it to me.